It's 1976, and the evenly split 4-4 Supreme Court are at odds with each other. One side says that the radio should not be regulated, and that doing so would be unconstitutional. The other half says that children are directly impacted by inadequate regulation on the airwaves. But wait, there are 9 justices on the court. One justice has yet to vote. Justice Stevens debates between these viewpoints and makes a decision that defines the broadcasting industry. Let's take a step back. This case the court is divided on is the infamous case Federal Communications Commission versus Pacifica Foundation, where the question, can you swear on public radio, is being debated. This was an important debate because it not only regulated the radio, but it changed how the First Amendment was applied to broadcasting. The question was sparked when an important man named John Douglas and his son were driving home from a college visit to Yale. They turned on the radio, and to the horror of Douglas, there were expletives being said on the radio. The program saying these expletives was a regularly scheduled Lunch Pail episode hosted by the Pacifica Foundation. And the issue of that episode of Lunch Pail was the impact of expletives on society. To illustrate that, they used George Carlin's Dirty Words monologue, where he talked about the words that you couldn't say on a public broadcast. John Douglas listened to this and was not happy. He wasn't happy because he was a member of Morality in Media. Morality in Media was founded by Catholic clergymen, and by the 70s, they had 50,000 members all across the United States. Their mission was to limit exposure that people had to obscene content on the radio. They were largely successful in their mission, being a valued third-party reporter to the Federal Communications Commission, who regulated obscene content on the radio. John Douglas's issue with the monologue was the 7 dirty words repeated during it. To Morality in Media and Douglas, the words said during the monologue were obscene and sexual in nature. So Douglas sent a complaint to the FCC about how Pacifica Foundation had just aired something that was obscene. When the FCC got his complaint, they decided that the inclusion of those words on the broadcast was obscene. So they told Pacifica Foundation that although they wouldn't issue a citation, they would keep this incident in mind when it came time to renew their radio license. Pacifica didn't take this lying down and was ready to fight this threat from the FCC. Pacifica was no stranger to fighting the government. They broadcast about marijuana, homosexuality, Watergate, American war crimes in Vietnam, and dissenters to McCarthyism, which drew the ire of the American government, Department of Justice, District Attorney of California, the FBI, other big broadcasters, and even sparked a communism investigation against them. Pacifica was not about to submit to the power of the FCC without a fight. They believed that the monologue was indecent, but not obscene. Now you might be saying, hold on, what the heck are you talking about? Our indecency and obscenity is the same thing. Get off my screen. Obscenity was defined in 1973 by the Supreme Court in Miller v. California. In Miller, a man named Marvin Miller tried to advertise his adult business with a mass mailing campaign. The people he was mailing to did not want to be bothered with this adult material in their mailbox, so they complained to the police, and they charged him with distributing obscene material. Miller appealed, saying that it was his right to distribute whatever he wanted, as his First Amendment freedom of expression said. The Supreme Court heard his case and ruled that obscenity is not protected under the First Amendment. They then established the Miller test to define obscenity, and it says something is obscene if it is offensive according to contemporary community standards, appeals to a pertinent sexual interest, and lacks any literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Indecency, on the other hand, is protected by the First Amendment, as was shown in Cohen v. California, where a man went into a California courtroom with a jacket. That man, Paul Cohen, was then charged with the California statute of maliciously disturbing the peace of a neighborhood. Cohen appealed to the Supreme Court, who ruled in 1971 that one man's vulgarity is another man's lyric, and protected Cohen's expression under the First Amendment. So knowing what these terms mean, we can see what each side was thinking. Morality in Media thought that the words said on the Carlin monologue were sexual, offensive, and had no intrinsic value. Pacifica said that, while yes, the words were indecent, like in Cohen, they did have artistic and political value, because Carlin was making a social commentary on the use of expletives. No matter how you interpreted it, this debate would go into the court system where Pacifica and the FCC would duke it out. The first court that would fight in would be the D.C. Circuit Court, where Pacifica would win 2-1, with Judges Tam and Bazelon agreeing that the monologue was indecent and had First Amendment protection, meaning it could not be censored. Judge that differed in opinion, Judge Leventhal, said that the FCC had an interest in protecting children from indecent speech, and they were acting against the language as broadcast. The FCC, unsatisfied with their loss, decided to appeal to the Supreme Court, against the advice of their lawyers in the United States Justice Department. In the Supreme Court, Pacifica and the FCC made their arguments. The FCC argued that they were only censoring because of the extreme language broadcast and the time of day. And they were acting in the interest of children who they believed were adversely affected by the radio, as radio sent messages inside the home and could not be avoided easily. Pacifica Foundation, on the other hand, argued that the FCC had no power whatsoever to regulate indecent speech on radio, and that they should be able to say whatever they pleased as long as it wasn't obscene according to the Miller test. And in response to the FCC's claim of the radio adversely affecting children, they said, change the radio station. After arguments, the court was split 4-4, with the only undecided vote being Justice Stevens. He was unsure of what he thought, even up until the final vote. He eventually ended his internal debate and decided that when the Federal Communications Commission finds that a pig has entered the parlor, the exercise of its regulatory power does not depend on proof that the pig is obscene. He later said, the result might have been different if the broadcaster had simply contended that a particular order was erroneous, because the evidence of actual or probable offense to the listening audience was so meager. The Supreme Court had ended the debate 5-4 over if you could swear on the radio. They had said, anything indecent is not okay over the radio. Directly after this, nothing really happened on the FCC's part. They didn't censor people at an increased rate. The real issue was the state governments. In the 80s, state governments in Utah and Florida tried to pass laws that would eliminate all indecent speech over television, radio, and phones, using frankly arbitrary terms, and they cited Pacifica as precedent. These laws were struck down eventually because of the massive public outcry and class action lawsuits. These laws, however, were only a prelude to the most consequential law for the regulation of indecent speech, the Telecommunications Act of 1992. The Telecommunications Act of 1992 said that the FCC had the power to censor any public broadcast that had obscene, indecent, or profane content. This translated to public television being put under new scrutiny and new censoring. This eventually resulted in a whole new Supreme Court case in the 2000s and 2010s. That case was FCC versus Fox. To make a long story short, the FCC had put an order out that said no swearing at all on TV. After that order, Fox hosted the Golden Globes where musical artists Bono and Cher swore on the broadcast. The FCC then hit Fox with a rebuke, but no citation. This angered Fox, and they decided to fight because they believed the order was constitutionally vague and their freedom of speech was being infringed on. The Supreme Court sided with the FCC in 2006 because the government has the right to make whatever order they want for any reason. But on the First Amendment issue, they ruled in 2012 that Fox was not at fault and that swearing on TV was acceptable if it was a fleeting expletive. Now, after hearing everything I presented, you might say, it's cool, but who cares, bro? It's just a dusty case in the 70s. I don't even like the radio. This case matters because it was a debate between a federal agency and a controversial radio station. This case matters because it was a debate between two different interpretations of what broadcasting should look like. This case resonated from the 70s with the actual case, the 80s with state laws, the 90s with the Telecommunications Act of 1992, the 2000s with the first Fox ruling, and the 2010s with the second Fox ruling. Pacifica was an important debate over what should be allowed to be said over the broadcasting medium, TV, radio, and everything in between. I'll let you decide which side of the debate you fall on. The side of the FCC or the side of the Pacifica Foundation.